Welcome back to our Student Film Festival. We have two new guests with us to talk about opportunities for young people in filmmaking. We have Brent and Noel. Noel, you talked this morning about making film, and so you tell us about yourself and we'll turn it over to Brent.
No, like 30 seconds you have to answer. There's no IFB case.
Yes, my name is, okay. Go ahead, Noel, I'm sorry.
I'm saying, hi, I'm Noel. I actually went to school for film and video, so I have a different degree than a lot of people just because my college that I went to did a film and video degree. And I now work at WCTE as a senior producer and digital media.
That covers
Brent.
Yeah, Brent, tell us about yourself.
Yes, my name is Brent Clark, and I've been working in the broadcast industry for probably almost 2 decades. Started out my career in the cable industry, and then transitioned over to public media about 4 years ago.
Well, and I am going to moderate between the two of you today, so thank you so much. And I am Cephas Ablakwa. I am not a filmmaker. I'm an artist, and I've done some photography. It's probably the extent of my anything that has to do with camera, and the rest is painting. So I look forward to learning from the two of you. And you know, this whole workshop is set up for young and aspiring filmmakers. So before we even get started, Brent, could you tell us what does it mean to be a filmmaker?
The meaning of filmmaker to me means, you know, to have this creative outlet to tell a story, whether it be your story or somebody else's story, through the lens of a camera, and just to create stories that we all love and want to know about people of diverse backgrounds and anywhere from throughout the world.
Thank you, Brent. What about you, Noel?
When it comes to filmmaking, for me, I actually originally wanted to do fiction filmmaking. So it was just telling a story that you could come up with and finding the best avenue to portray it. And now that I'm in public television, it's more telling everyone else's story than the stories that I've come up with.
Right. And Brent, I don't want to single you out here, but you know, you and I maybe were in a little of an age where we didn't have phone cameras and all these other avenues to making film. Could you briefly just talk about the transition and how easy or more difficult it is to become a filmmaker from when you started in an industry to the resources that are available to young people now?
That's right. That's a great point, Cephas. You know, in today's world, we all have cell phones, smartphones, and literally anybody can record or produce a film shooting with their cell phones. So the barriers to entry to create films, short films, documentaries is so low compared to what they used to be when I was starting out in the cable industry. I mean, you had to have big, expensive, elaborate cameras. Some of the cameras that I worked with cost $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, and you can literally shoot film or shoot a film, a documentary with your cell phone, and it just looks amazing, the technology that is so advanced in a smartphone.
Yes, and on that note, Noel, this morning you did a workshop on cell phone filmmaking. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I kind of came in the age of half of that, where like at the beginning of my childhood, we still had mini DV tapes where you actually had to load the tape into your camcorder. I mean, it was only a couple $100 to nowadays where I can do a full hour-long webinar literally on my phone. So it's kind of an interesting change to see all that. But now when your phones could actually have a lot more capabilities because of the quality that it has is wonderful.
Now you do this professionally. You work at WCTE, and you are a filmmaker, and you're a producer, you edit. So is there, for young people that are starting out with the cell phone camera, are they at a disadvantage or an advantage?
They're probably more at a better advantage than I was at their age. I mean, I still had to go buy cameras. I think the first camera I bought was $150, and it literally was almost like a flip camera, if anyone remembers that. And I had to actually buy editing software and everything, where you can actually now have free apps to edit your videos that you shoot on your phone. You can edit on your phone as well. So that's kind of amazing, because you don't have to have those costs anymore.
Yes, and that's, and I've seen that as a teacher, just from when I started teaching, when students didn't have cell phones, and to now where everyone has a cell phone in the class, almost everybody. Brent, let me start with this question: how can young students, start out in a filmmaking career?
That's a great question, Cephas, and so many students ask me that same question. I would encourage students to research film camps. So this summer is coming up. Now would be a great time to research what sort of film camps are in your region. Also, look at gaining experience in high school. Perhaps you've got a arts program of the sort in high school, a film program at high school. Take as many film classes as possible that are offered through high school. Look for internship opportunities. Here at WCTE, we are so proud of our interns who come to us. Last semester, I had 3. This semester, I have 2. And we will not turn down an intern just because they're so valuable to the team. And it's such a great learning opportunity for the interns. Build up a portfolio. Begin shooting short films and get experience. See what works, see what doesn't work. And, you know, having this plethora of experience will really build a student's core skill set. So when they do graduate from high school and move on, looking at potential colleges such as film and television, which I believe is what Noel had graduated with and her college. But, you know, there's also film academies, and there's just so much opportunity to grow and learn in this industry.
Thank you, Brent. Noel, tell us about your journey. How did you start out, and what were you? Is this what you always wanted to do in high school? How did you end up where you are?
Long story short, I've had a camera in my hand since I was 3 years old. Why my parents let me run around with their video camera when I was 3, I have no idea. I ask them this all the time, and they still haven't given me a good answer. But to answer your question, when I was in high school, it wasn't until probably my senior year that I decided that I wanted to go into making movies. So, but I've always had a fascination with video cameras and cameras. If you guys haven't noticed my wall behind me, obviously I love cameras. But it was my junior and senior year of high school where I actually started looking for colleges that offered a film degree, not a film certificate, but actually a film degree. Because there's a lot of.
What's the difference? Before you move on, tell us a little bit about the difference of between.
The difference is a lot of the times, if you get a certificate, you actually get a degree in communications with a certification of video. And for me, that wasn't what I was looking for. For some people, it's a great avenue to go into because you're learning more about your communications, and then you take a few extra classes to get the video degree. I was a person who wanted to be more hands-on. I wanted to learn almost every aspect of film because I wanted to go into movies. Obviously, I did not go into movies. So that's the difference is when you're, for my suggestion, if you're looking to go down the path that I went down and wanting to be more hands-on, look for a college that has film degrees, but also look to see how many, the best way is to say lab classes, where you're actually creating your movies or you're working with the audio or you're learning about lighting. Any of those classes will be more than likely non-lecture classes, so you'll actually get to learn hands-on. And from then, I went to a university that had a PBS attached to it. So I could actually work at a PBS station part-time while I went to school And then I also got a few internships. One was actually paid over the summer. That was, now looking at the date, 10 years ago. That's scary. And then there was another one that I interned at a news station in the creative service program. And when I graduated, I actually worked there part-time as well.
And before I move on to the next question, Brent, I want to come back to you with what Noel said. You talked briefly about some interns that you have here. Is this a normal thing for film producing entities or organizations such as WCTE to have interns? And can students take advantage of that?
Yeah, that's one of the most wonderful things about PBS across the country. You know, Cephas, there are 350 PBS stations across the country. And if you're a high school student, find out who your local PBS station is and reach out to them and let them know what you're interested in doing, and let them know and ask them if they have any internship opportunities. Even if you don't get your foot in the door in the production wing, maybe there's a marketing intern that they may need help with. Start out as a marketing intern and then eventually transition over to production, because just learning the core basic business of marketing and sales, you know, any opportunity to build that skill set, and then eventually travel over to production and continue to build that skill set.
Yeah, and it's so.
Do you mind if I interrupt real quick?
Yes, yes.
I'm going to say this just because it's one of my experiences. I went to a college fair when I was a sophomore, and don't get discouraged if they say you're not of age to actually be part of our internship. Long story short, I still handed them my resume of the limited experience I had. And the next summer, when I was a junior going into my senior year, they called me up asking if I was still interested in an internship. So don't get discouraged if you're not of age. There is a good possibility they will call you when you are of age.
So
that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, churches, a lot of the churches have film and video departments. You can get great experience in churches and other nonprofit organizations.
So basically, from what I'm hearing the two of you say, that we should not despise those little opportunities that as say a young filmmaker you get, whether it's at a church or at a camp or some internship or even in a classroom. Those are all things that add up, is basically what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I was actually a key assistant on a low budget film that only aired in the area of the west side of Michigan, and that gave me so much experience of what it's like to be on a low budget set. So when I actually was in college and had to be on those low budget sets, I knew how it ran. So any experience is great experience.
That's right.
So speaking of low budget set, say I'm a teenager, I'm in high school, and I want to produce my first short film. Walk me through some of the tips that will help me do that. We'll start with you, Brent.
Okay. Well, you know, you're building your toolbox. So I would suggest starting out by writing a script, a video treatment, just sort of do a broad stroke of what your creative vision is. And then you might want a storyboard. So when you actually go outside and execute your creative vision, you would build a storyboard. Even if you can't draw, I can't draw, but I could draw stick figures and put two stick figures together in a box and say, okay, this is the camera angle that I want to shoot at, and build this storyboard. So when you're ready to go out and start shooting content, you will have it all right there, and you'll be more efficient. You'll have a better creative vision, and you'll have a better product because you pre-planned for that film. Noel?
I'm actually looking to see if I have any storyboards. I do not have storyboards, but I have a script breakdown that I can show you guys. But so this is kind of a script breakdown, what you would see in an everyday film shoot, something you guys could, there's quite a few that you can download for free on the internet. There's a lot of pre-planning and pre-production when it comes to that stuff. But I agree with Brent. There's a lot of things that you can do beforehand to shoot to get what you're looking for when it comes to what you're trying to make in your movies. I'm going to go talk more about the equipment, just so you guys can see that it's actually a very, thank you for whoever put up the storyboard. For right now, I'm using maybe 3 lights. I'm using an overhead light that came with my apartment, and I'm using literally 2 lamps to get this type of lighting. And for my audio, I'm using the headphones that came with my phone. So you can create really good images and really good sound without actually doing a lot of cost. So just go around your house and kind of get a little thrifty. Always make sure your lenses are clean, whether you're shooting with a phone or a camera, because that will affect your quality. But yeah, there's a lot of things around your house that you can actually use for filmmaking without even thinking about it.
You know, something that I used to use when I was early on in my filmmaking was taking a sheet, a bed sheet, and using that as a background, a colored bed sheet. And, you know, that works beautifully. Something that we should talk about is post. Once you get your content shot, then you need something to edit it with. iMovie is very popular with students these days. I came from an industry where we worked in Avid, which is archaic, I'm sure, to many of you watching the stream. We transitioned over to Final Cut Pro, and now the broadcast industry has transitioned over to Adobe Premiere. So if you're looking to build your editing skills, Adobe Premiere is certainly an editing software that you want to get familiar with. But like I said, iMovie does a great job in editing short films.
I'm going to date myself and tell you what I actually learned off of, and that was Windows Movie Maker, which I'm not even sure is made anymore. But yes, if you can learn Adobe, you will be very versatile in the industry. But if you're looking for something free, you can use any app that you have. Video editing, DaVinci is a free software for editing. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get a free editing software without, I guess the nicest way is saying breaking copyright laws, which is something you have to make sure that you never do in filmmaking, because that can be a lot of money if you break those and you get caught. And that's not fun.
So this is very interesting. So what I'm hearing the two of you say is it's not really having the most expensive equipment to get started. That, you know, even just what you have around the house, like the headphones or headsets to your iPhone, or just a couple of lights, just increases, you know, the experience and pushes you forward to make films.
You're exactly right, Cephas. You don't need a lot of expensive equipment. A smartphone, as we talked about earlier, it just does a beautiful job exporting it out to your editing software. You can just do so much in a very cost-effective way. I will say, the more films that you shoot and edit, the better you will get, because as we all know, practice is perfect. And so what I recommend is edit a film, screen it in front of a live audience, whether it be friends, family, or both. Listen to their feedback and make adjustments for your next film. Because I've worked with lots of filmmakers, and one of the most important concepts to understand and remember is everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's creative process is different, but you will find tidbits of information in anybody's feedback that you can take to move forward and make your next film bigger and better.
Yeah, I've been editing since, on a somewhat professional level, or I guess software is probably the best way, since 8th grade, to be all honest. And I still have, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how much to learn when it comes to editing softwares. And I still say I'm a beginner, or like intermediate beginner, because I don't feel like I'm up to movie standards, which I cannot tell you, like, probably they spend tens of thousands of hours working on that stuff before they even get into the major motion pictures.
So this is so interesting to me because we're all used to, or I guess I am, since I'm not in the filmmaking industry, to what we see as movies. But what we're talking about is just doing the best with what you have, and connecting the dots and then building on that little by little until you graduate to the next level or the next skill set that you need to acquire. Now, I've heard you guys talk a lot about editing. Could you connect the dots and see how important it is it? Because most of us, we just like to shoot the phone, here is somebody doing something and we just shoot it on our iPhone and that's it. But could you talk about the importance of editing and how it helps one become a filmmaker?
I think editing is probably one of the most important stages in the filmmaking process, because you are literally taking all this footage that you have shot and you're creating and building a story. And as Noel can speak about, in the editing process, it is countless hours because you're trying to get a soundbite to mesh with another soundbite to keep that story moving and keep it fluid where you're engaging your audience. And Noel, I'm going to pass this off to you where you can sort of talk about how you sort of put together your bins and throw your media on a timeline and start to make the edits and cuts to build this story out.
I'm going to take a quick step back and explain how, in the simplest ways, how editing can actually affect the way you actually see something. If you take an action sequence, you can notice how many cuts and how fast paced it is. But if you take that same scene and you draw out those lengths of each cut and you don't have as many, that vastly changes the way that movie looks and feels. So editing becomes very important just because it actually affects the flow of the feel of the movie, to be all honest. So for me, editing is very important. And my process when it goes into editing is, when it comes to a lot of our local productions like One-on-One or Now That's a Good Question, which both I have edited, or American Portrait, the local content that we've had, I actually listen to all, and I mean all, of the interviews and everything that we've taped and everything before I actually even start editing. I lay it all out on a timeline. Sometimes it's 4, 5, 6 hours. And sadly, I'm not even exaggerating on this. And I listen to every single thing that is said. And I think about how one thought can flow into another when it comes to weaving the stories together. So after I lay it out and I start cutting it and putting it together what I think makes sense in my head, I actually take a break and step away from it or start working on a different project. When it comes to that, or it's the end of the day and I take the rest of the day off and not even think about what's going on. And after that, I'll go back and rewatch it. I've watched each show probably 20 times easily before even it going live. And if you can see, there's a timeline from, I want to say, iMovie or Final Cut 10. I cannot tell you off the top of my head. And if you look at it, there's a lot of different levels to it. There is the video, there is video on top of video, there's transitions, there is titles, there's sound from the video, and then extra audio under it. I've seen timelines, no lie, with 50, 60, 100 and something different tracks just so you can actually get a good motion for any type of video you're editing.
So now that you've explained that to us, are there resources and books that students that are aspiring to be filmmakers can start to look at and learn from and learn these things that you're talking about? And we'll start with just editing first, and then we'll talk about books that they can then look at to learn about just filmmaking in general.
When it comes to editing, I suggest YouTube. YouTube has thousands upon thousands of videos that you can learn from editing. Even places like DaVinci or Adobe have their own editing / teaching lessons for their apps that you can use. So YouTube for editing itself.
Right. And Brent, could you tell us what are some books? Because you and I come from the book age, right? So we know there's YouTube and there's resources online, but there are always in every industry or every, like for me as an artist, there are always those classic books, those key books, or those very fundamental books that people recommend. Are there any that do you recommend?
Sure, I've got several, but I will sort of echo what Noel said. YouTube University, Noel and I and all of the producers here at the station, we have graduated from. So you can watch clip after clip after clip, tutorial after tutorial on YouTube University and learn so much. So that is an excellent resource. A couple of my favorite books one is How to Make a Movie in 10 Easy Lessons. It's by Robert Blofield, and it really talks about concepts and equipment such as what is a wide angle lens. Not many people may know about what a wide angle lens is. Another favorite book of mine is Who is George Lucas? And for those of you who have not heard of George Lucas, he made that small little franchise film of the Star Wars. This book was written by Pam Pollock, Meg Belso, Ted Hammond, and Kevin McNay. And this really talks about George Lucas and how he built his career and created the Star Wars franchise. So it's an excellent book to learn from. And then another book that I like is Kids Guides to Movie Making. It's a fun book, easy to read book, illustrations, and just a real easy book to read. I will say, Cephas, that I graduated with a theater degree, and that was such a great opportunity for me to learn what lighting was all about, because we all know when we go to a theater, lighting is key. It gave me the opportunity to act. And so I really got to understand what actors sort of go through in creating characters. So if you don't have a lot of resources in your community, if you live in a very rural area, look to your local theatrical groups and get involved. And you will learn so much by working at a theater on the stage, serving as an intern. Take some acting classes. Read some acting books, because the better you are as a producer and as a director, now you will be directing your film most likely, and you really need to understand how does a person get into character. And being an actor yourself, it will help you immensely in directing the actors on your set.
Well, there's a lot to that you said. So I want to slow you down and go back a little bit to a couple of things that you said. Now, I know you've worked in some other places, urban places, and now you're here in Cookeville. Tell us what are some of the differences you see? Like we have people that are probably watching from different places because we have so many entries from different countries in our film festival. So in case, even if they watch this later, tell us the difference and what opportunities are there that you saw in urban places and that are some that are in the rural places that both places can take advantage of.
Right. So I came from a big corporate environment. In corporate America, people are very specialized, such as director of photographers, sound recordist, lighting directors. But in rural areas, you'll find a PBS station such as WCTE, and you'll have the opportunity to really work in all those areas. So I worked in a very specialized area when I came from corporate America, and then transitioned over to public media. And as Noel will tell you, I didn't serve as a director or photographer or an editor or a sound recordist, but it really gave me the opportunity to learn all these trades and skill sets in a rural region that we serve.
What about you, Noel? Do you know of any different opportunities that you see here in our rural community that may not be in an urban community?
I haven't been here super long, but I would definitely recommend everything that Brent has said so far. You could also always volunteer at WCTE. We always look for volunteers when it comes to our live productions, and you can learn all about the different jobs that we have in our live events, which for us, we tend to wear multiple hats. So I could be not only directing what is going on screen, I could also actually be switching the cameras that are actually hooked up to our truck and all that to create something along those lines of having specialization, but having specialization in multiple different areas. I'm not only a producer, I'm a cinematographist. Sorry, the word just escaped me for a second. I'm a videographer. I'm an editor. Like, there's so many different jobs that you can have when you're in a smaller rural area, and then you can actually find what else you like to do instead of just being specialized in one area.
So, okay, so I understand some people watching will probably be like me and others are more advanced. So let's kind of break some of these things down. You talked about the different specialized areas. So if you just have a young, enthusiastic filmmaker, what are the distinction between some of these things as they get older? What are some of the distinctions? What's the difference between a director and a producer, and some of the other key points that is in the filmmaker's world? Could y'all talk about that a little bit?
Brent, do you want to start out?
Yes, sure. So as Noel and I mentioned, working for a PBS station, we wear multiple hats, which is wonderful experience because you're building upon your skill sets. You go work for a larger organization, you'll work in a very specialized role. So as a director will work hand in hand with the producer, and the director is simply executing the producer's creative vision. And so they work hand in hand on the set. You may have a boom operator who is recording the actors, holding a boom above their heads, capturing the sound. You'll have a DP who is actually running the camera, and other fun, very important roles in the film industry include hair and makeup. Craft services, which is one of my favorites because you have craft services on a set, you're going to have food and drinks, and you're going to be able to energize the crew and energize talent. And you've always got something to put in your stomach to have those long days. Because let me tell you, shooting films can be long days. I mean, 16-hour plus days. There were many days that I worked 20 hours, would go home, lay down for a couple hours, and then get back up. When I worked as an actor, I moved to LA for a year after I graduated from undergraduate school. And I had the opportunity to work as an actor as Charlie Sheen's Capitol Police Officer on The West Wing, which is a series that happened many years ago. But, I worked with these various types of positions and crew members, and just had the great experience and opportunity to be on a television set, which has helped me in my career here at WCTE and when I was back in corporate America. So yes, these specialized roles, if you get the opportunity to learn the skill set, take on the responsibility, learn from it, and you will come out to be a better filmmaker because you will understand how these key important roles really work together to make this amazing creative film that you'll be working on.
So it's saying that the filmmaking industry is just a lot of different things, and it's open to a lot of people with different interests, whether you're interested in just audio and sound, makeup, and there's just so many different things. So could you all just talk about what are some of the degrees that are more geared towards, filmmaking?
Yeah, originally I told my parents that I was going to go into movies. and they looked at me like I was crazy. And they go, would you please double major in something else just so you have job security? And this was 2009, 2010, when movies and television was really anything that people were seeing. There wasn't much YouTube, or gosh, I don't think Instagram was even created at that point. I definitely know TikTok was not invented at that point. So and when it came to internet advertising, there was not a lot of video making. There was a lot of photos. So my parents were super, super concerned that I wouldn't have a job as soon as I graduated college. And it can be very frustrating and concerning for parents, but I promise if you do a digital media or journalism or filmmaking, and yes, these are all degrees that I know of. I think there's even one called a new media degree, which is more online videos and stuff like that. You can do advertising and marketing, which would also give you the experience in filmmaking if you wanted to go towards that side. So there's a lot of degrees out there. You just have to do your research before you go in. And if you don't like one thing, like I was a advertising major along with my filmmaking, I dropped advertising and went straight into filmmaking. Take those classes that are the introductory classes, see if you like it. If not, move on to a different part of the film industry is my suggestion.
Right. And for me, I mentioned that I was a theater major, but it was a struggle with my parents as well. And so I told them just so we would agree that I would major in theater and then also get a business degree in marketing. And so, I can't, people come to me and ask me, am I going to make any money doing this? And if you follow your passion, and I would say for certainly Noel's passion is production, my passion is production, broadcast, follow your passion, and it'll eventually lead you to the money that you want to make one day. But, some other types of programs, of course, a bachelor degree in film and television, which Noel earned, go to film school, work on low budget films, work on some indie films. Even if you're a production assistant, get the experience and get the opportunity. And what that allows you to do is you build relationships, and building relationships is important, and it's key because somebody that you might meet tomorrow may be the George Lucas in 20 years. And I'll tell you what, you would have built that relationship, worked with that person, did a great job. And maybe in 20 years, if you or the other person becomes the next George Lucas, that person will bring you on and you'll work on these high budget films. But once again, follow your passion and look to universities. We've got a wonderful university in our backyard, Tennessee Tech University. It has a sports and broadcast program, which we're going to be partnering with them once we can go back in the field and shoot live events such as sports. And then also they have a nice journalism department as well. So, you can go to a university, take classes. Like I said, reach out to your local PBS station because PBS, its core competency is to tell local stories. And you will get so much experience telling local stories in the region and the areas that it serves. And you will build your resume and become an excellent filmmaker down the road.
I can attest to the production assistants. I've been quite a few production assistants on different things. So don't think of it as a bad thing. It's definitely a great stepping stone for sure.
There are no small positions, only small people. So remember that in your career. There are no small positions. You will learn so much from a small position than you will a big position.
Thank you so much, Brent. I do want to introduce Becky Magura, who just joined us now, and she is the CEO and president of WCTE in Cookeville, Tennessee. And for those that are on the live stream with us or watching later, please visit WCTE. There's so much more information on there, and you can also watch a lot of these workshops that are recorded. And we also have other things that we do here at WCTE. So please check out our website and think about becoming a member if you live here locally. All right. So Becky, we are talking about opportunities for filmmakers. And as you guys know, I love statistics and I love numbers. And I think the Bureau of Labor and Statistics tell us that about $75,000 is the median income for a filmmaker. Now, this is important because when I taught high school, when you talk about career, the first question the students ask is, how much can I make? How much can I make? So, Brent, could you also hit a little bit on, again, since you work in urban and rural areas, just the landscape? I know it's different for engineers, sound engineers, different for producers, directors, but basically help us to understand kind of the landscape and how it works, just generally.
Is that a question for Becky or me?
He's speechless. He asked it to you, Brent. But
Okay. Well, I will say.
speechless.
Okay. I will say salaries are generally higher in more urban area because the cost of living is more expensive to live in an urban area versus a suburban area. But, it's going to depend on the role. It's going to depend on your experience. That's going to vary as far as having a low salary versus a high salary. And it's going to depend on where you are in your career level. If you're just starting out in your career, or if you're, mid-level in your career, or if you're at the top of your career, like Becky, who has been the CEO of WCTE for the last 11 years, I guess.
Pretty close to that, right at 2006. So I think Brent's right. It is going to depend. That's a high salary in a public television station in a rural community. That's a higher level salary. Now, I do have friends that work in as freelancers, and they work. And if you get a job, if you're fortunate to get a job with Netflix, you can make some good money. The difficulty with freelance positions obviously are you're always looking for the next job. So I've been following you guys, even though I was on another call, a really great call with other public television leaders. I was watching your session here and following on the closed caption. You've given a lot of great information. So I don't know that I have a whole lot to add. The one thing is, I know Brent talked about internships. You cannot underestimate being an intern. That's how I started in public television. I was the station's first student intern, and I have had a variety of positions. I was an audio technician. I ran camera on all the sporting events. I've been an on-air host. I've been a producer. I've been the director of education, and then I was the station manager, and now the CEO. So I think if you're willing to just get in and work, and you're passionate and you love the work. I remember when I started, honestly, I had 2 degrees in education, and I loved teaching, and I was going to teach, but then I decided that television might be an opportunity. And while I was working at WCT as an intern, I probably physically worked harder than I had ever worked in my life. And I worked longer hours than I had ever worked. I would work full weekends. And I remember saying to my parents, I love this. I love this. I don't want to do anything else but this. And they were like, well, you're not making much money. And I'd say, no, but I love what I'm doing. And eventually you can make more money, but you just have to stay with it, and you have to be willing. And sometimes you have to be willing to move to make more money. That's another the reality of it. So just, if you're enjoying this, do your best and stay with it. Right, guys?
For sure. I want to say I'm probably at my 4th station, and definitely 3rd, maybe 4th state. So be okay with moving. It will be fine. You will find lovely people all around you. I promise.
That's interesting, Noel. But so that kind of brings up another aspect of filmmaking, right? With filmmaking, how much more are filmmakers and consumers of film exposed to diversity? You know, how does that connect to filmmaking? Could you guys touch on that a little bit?
Well, I think because of the COVID pandemic, we're seeing how the barriers to entry to watch films, such as when a film comes out in the movie theater, it's coming out on Netflix, for example, the same day. So with the digital streaming properties, we're seeing the landscape of films being viewed digitally versus how we used to see it before COVID, maybe going to a theater, which we'll get back to that eventually. But with the digital properties and the barriers to entry lower, we're seeing more and more content, more and more diversified content. So when you're on Netflix, you'll see thousands and thousands and thousands of films that you have access to at any point in time, where back, when I was growing up, you had to go to a Blockbuster and pick out one film, take it home, watch it, bring it back, and then pick out another film. That's the old days. Or maybe it was a VHS tape.
Yes, it was a VHS.
But, cutting the cord, and I'm not sure if many people have heard about cutting the cord. Of course, we have in the broadcast industry, but a lot of people are cutting the cord, meaning they're getting rid of their cable subscriptions, and that's been going on for at least 10 years. And so I know here at WCTE, we're really focused on how we can serve a digital audience, both our digital and broadcast audience. So all the original content that we put out for broadcast, we also make available on our website, so our digital audience can see it. We're also on YouTube TV, and we just launched our main channel stream about 2 weeks ago. So anybody can go to our website as long as you're within our viewing district, or go to our app, and you can see a live feed of our WCTE main channel. So just, the technology is changing the landscape of broadcast. It has been for the last 10 plus years, and it will continue to change the landscape, where people and consumers will be able to see what they want, when they want, and where they want. And literally, consumer viewing consumption is changing how we as producers are putting out content and creating content and producing content for people to want to see.
I will toss in there that and Brent's absolutely right. Broadcasting is still the number one way people receive media. It is changing. The streaming opportunities have grown, and they'll continue to grow. But if you have a product, the reason that so many independent producers come to WCTE to help them get their product out nationally, like Bluegrass Underground and some of the other shows that you may know from us, Jammin' at Hippie Jacks. And we're working on a new one with Billy Deck, who was on earlier today, called Food Roots Philippines. And I think the reason is, if you want eyeballs on your content, this is a great way to go. Broadcast has the greatest reach. It's why it's called broadcast, right? Now, if you want a real specialized audience, there are different ways of going about that. And we even have different streaming channels that we offer, like the Create channel or the World channel. And just got off a presentation where both of those channels are drawing viewers at a younger age, a more diverse audience, are finding content that they appreciate and love on public television, which is free. If you have an antenna, you can get WCTE and all of our channels. So it is a way for you to not have to, you can cut the cord and still get broadcast TV with an antenna. That sounds really old school, but nowadays you can have an indoor antenna, and in most urban areas, you can get all the channels, all the commercial channels, and public television. So great, great, great opportunities for filmmakers and for consumers.
So we have a few minutes here, maybe about 10. So I wanna pivot a little bit, because the three of you work on shows together, right? And some of these shows are different. There are 1-on-1, Live at 5. And so I do want to talk about just the different roles in these specific shows, right? And how do they serve what are some of the skill sets, or what are some of the things that are core to filmmaking across all these shows? So either one of you can start off. Let's have Noel probably jump in here.
Okay. For me, when it comes to the shows that we work on, I tend to be the director and the videographer and editor on these shows. So it's one of those things where I'm working with Brent and Becky in the pre-production to actually figure out what we're looking at for shooting, what are some of their ideas of what they want to have during the actual shooting process. And then when we go into post, I'll communicate with them more about what they actually want footage-wise of what we recorded. But once it gets to production, I'm usually the one that is in charge, but in pre and post, I take a step back and listen to what everyone else says.
Now, before you get on, Brent, tell us the shows and what they are. You know, I know we have 101. Tell us a few about, just list some of the shows for us so we know what we're talking about.
Okay, 101 with Becky Magura, which is Becky's show. We've got two new series that launched last quarter. One, It's Your Business with Michael Akins. He received a grant from the CARES Act, and he's been going around and interviewing local businesses and how they've been able to stay alive in this COVID environment. And then the third show is titled Now That's a Good Question with Phil Oldham, who's the president of Tennessee Tech University. And he's been interviewing, and this is Noel's show, and he's been interviewing so many wonderful professors and faculty over Tennessee Tech University, talking about their role at the university and how they're remaining competitive for the university, and what they're doing to students to teach the students.
Yeah, and I'll just join in to say we're really fortunate to have a talented team, but also to just be very committed to local production. So we work with our own team, but we also work with a number of independent producers. And I think it really makes for an incredible opportunity to share content. I mean, the whole purpose really of this film festival is to grow a new generation of filmmakers for public media. We know that we have a wonderful pipeline locally, regionally, nationally, and this is an opportunity for us to share the opportunities that public media bring. And, you know, Bobby had asked a couple of really great questions, like how long does a typical production take from start to finish? Well, that depends on the production. I mean, some are unbelievably complex. You can have a half-hour documentary that you would end up having 40 hours of content for, and actually we just finished the Tennessee Tornado Putnam Strong that Daniel Duarte is he's the producer and director and editor and videographer of that. Our whole team worked on that, but he had countless hours of content that had to be edited down to a 1 hour. And so that can take a lot of time. He actually just put it together in 3 months, which is almost unheard of for a documentary of that magnitude. It is up for two Emmys, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. It's also up for a Public Media Awards, National Public Media Award. That's another thing you need to consider, is celebrating your work. So if you have something that you can enter into a contest, you need to do that. You know, Noel can probably add to that, Brent could add to that, but it's going to depend on the show. The other question Bobby had is, where can filmmakers get their ideas or motivation for their productions? I think there's if it moves you, if you're passionate about it, that's the best place to start. You know, you have to remember you're an artist. Cephas, you're an artist. Yeah. So where you start is you start with what catches your eye, or what do you want? What story do you want to tell? And then you have to just go for it. You have to go for it. I'm reading a book right now called The Artist Way. I don't know if any of you have ever read that. It's been in many renditions. Julia Cameron, who's a famous filmmaker, wrote that. And it's really about everyone finding their artist within And it's a 12-week incredible program for you to really just take part in, sort of a self-motivated, self-directed study. You have to write morning pages every day, just sort of free-flowing thought to really stimulate that creative side. So that would be my suggestion also. Check out The Artist Way.
Well,
And one thing to mention, Cephas, is that we're all creative people and we all have creative ideas. We go out and film a project and we're all going to have different ideas on how to put that story together. I mean, we have an overall arching idea of how we want this story to tell, like the tornado documentary. But, I think you just got to be open to feedback. Noel works with me in production and she edits something and I'll provide feedback. And if she's passionate about it staying the way that she has it, she'll push back and I'll ask her why. And then she might, say, well, this is why I edited it, this clip this way to tell this part of the story. And if 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, I'm going to say, you know what? You're right. So we all have creative opinions and creative ideas. Just be open and flexible to other people's, because what we like to do at WCTE is really sort of mesh all those creative ideas together, and we come up with a better product anyway. So just keeping an open mind about that.
Collaboration is a wonderful, wonderful thing for when it comes to filmmaking or really anything in particular, business, any artistic stuff. Collaboration is great because you can bounce more ideas off of other people. For me, when I was younger, when I was getting my ideas or my motivation to create productions, I was actually looking at what I was seeing on TV or what I was seeing in the movies. My school was a little bit more advanced in high school and a little bit more liberal, I guess is probably the best way. And we had a English class called Analyzing Literature and Film. And with that, we picked a director and created our own film and basically took everything that we knew about the director and went with their style. So for me, I went with Ridley Scott, who is known for Numbers. If you guys remember that show, he produced The Gladiator and stuff like that. The Good Wife was one of his other shows that was very prominent when I was in high school. So I just took a lot of ideas from other people who have already created those ideas and made them my own. One of the sayings that a lot of people say is good artists create, great artists steal.
Change the rundown, put them in a different order.
That is something to look at other people's ideas and elaborate more on what you like about it and make it your own. And another thing that I remember not that long ago was I saw someone say along the lines of, maybe it takes me 10 minutes now, but it took me 10 years to get to that 10 minutes to create what you're looking at. So if it's taking you hours to edit one scene, don't worry about it. It will be something that you can speed up later on in your life. You just need the experience and the practice.
Before we finish, I've got just one more question. I'd like maybe Becky to probably answer this, or anybody can chime in, but I'd like to wrap up with Becky. Most of you here, all three of you here are very experienced, and we have student filmmakers that are probably entering into shows like this or contests like this. How do you keep going? How do you fight off the discouragement from the rejection? So just, we've got about a minute, and then if you can, just each one of you just tell us something real brief, and we'll end with Becky.
Oh, well, okay. You want me to end or go now?
Yes, I do want you to end.
Okay.
Brent? Noel?
I'll go first. Just keep following your passions. Yes, it's very discouraging for you to get that rejection, but the more and more you actually submit the more likely you are actually to get accepted to something. There's a lot of people saying authors submit their books to like 100 publishing companies, and then finally someone says yes. So in amongst those no's, there will be a yes.
That's right. And that's something that we have all had to work with throughout our careers is, especially as an actor, I was told no every single day when I moved to LA and went on all these casting scouts. I was told no, 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 no. But I didn't let it deter me. Follow your passion, do what you love, and you will find your place. And, life is too short to do something that you're not happy in doing. And I know people who work just to work. And so you want to foster that creativity and do what you love. And that just sort of inspires other people around you. And so go after your dream, follow your dream. Don't let your parents tell you no. Do what you feel like you want to do and be the person that you want to be, and get your education and learn from any job that you have the opportunity to take, whether it be a production assistant, whether it be a gopher. Take any position on and learn from it and continue to build those professional relationships, because that is key and that will carry you throughout your career.
Well, I don't know that I can say it any better than that. That they both said absolutely spot on. I will just say, a wise friend of mine said one time, get up, dress up, show up, and never give up. And when you do that, look what you might get. Your very own Emmy. So I wouldn't have thought this would be mine or WCTE's, and yet it is. And we're continuing to bring them in. So that could be you. Get up, dress up, show up, and never give up.
Well, thank you guys so much. That is great advice. You offered so much for us to think about, and we want to thank you, Becky, Noel, and Brent. Our next panel discussion, our next one is with Sarah Cravens. So please join in at 6 p.m. Thank you, and don't forget to visit WCT, especially if you're local and consider becoming a member. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.